it got to the point that, after about the 25th day of chasing us around, making sure we were all alive, we would walk around, and teach people and try to get them to come to a meeting or something, and Morris would give a talk or something, and he always wore this orange fluorescent baseball hat. and his shirt was slightly untucked, and he was looking kind of disheveled. This was like about the 25th day, he was looking kind of tired. And he always had this little instrument that he played called the kalimba. And he was like, I just can't wait to get rid of these guys. I want to get back to Chicago and get some rest. And so we would invite all these people, and this guy has changed so much that he would whip out his kalimba, start playing his kalimba, and I don't know if you guys know this, but he used to pioneer to Bermuda, so he'd automatically get this Jamaican accent, and he starts playing his kalimba, and everybody's, moving to the music and everything, and he'd give a fireside that consisted of, God is one, man is one, and all the religions agree, thank you. And now he's coming up here to give a talk of like 40 minutes. Things have definitely changed. Welcome, Morris Taylor.
Hello, Pa. The woman next to me turned to me and said, "We're saving you for dessert tonight." And I said, "But I'm only half baked." You wouldn't guess it, but Philip White is a friend of mine. It's true. It's Saturday night, and we're here at Green Lake with family and friends. It's been a wonderful day. I thought this would be a great time for stories. Just stories. When I look at the history of the faith, there are three things that always stand out for me. Repeatedly, you find extraordinary models of purest love. You find examples of stoic and unwavering faith. And you find countless episodes which can only be categorized as miraculous. And that's what I'd like to talk about tonight. Stories of love, faith, and miracles. Now it's being recorded, as you know. So I'm going to be careful with names. And this is the rule that I'll follow. If the people are alive, I won't use their names. Okay? Now this keeps them from being embarrassed, and it also keeps me from getting in trouble if I louse up this story. On the other hand, if the people are dead, and by that I mean physically dead, not spiritually dead, I will use their names because they can't get to me. And it's that simple. Let's start with love. What is love? And the definition from all my children doesn't count, okay? Baha'u'llah has said that the first sign of faith is love. The first sign of faith is love. That's an interesting definition. I want to look at three examples. First, the love of the manifestation. Secondly, love within the community. And then the love that existed within the Holy Family. First, the love of the manifestation. The love of the manifestation of God for humanity. A pure, a more undefiled, a more sacrificial love the world cannot imagine. All of the manifestations of God suffered. But because of the greatness of this day, the suffering of Baha'u'llah was unlike that of any previous manifestation of God. Abdu'l-Baha was quoted as saying, "The Blessed Beauty sacrificed his friends, his home, comfort, wealth, honor, prestige, health, his very life, for the sake of humanity." From the Black Pit in Tehran, to Baghdad, to Constantinople, to Adrianople, finally to the prison city of Akka, for 40 years, never a restful night, never a day without trial and ordeal, never able to even share the burden of the world, always alone. the manifestation of God. You know, at firesides, sometimes I hear people ask, if Baha'u'llah is the promised one of all ages, if Baha'u'llah is the King of Kings, if Baha'u'llah is the return of the Father to the vineyard, why was he a prisoner? Why was he in exile? Why was he in chains, beaten, reviled throughout his life? Shouldn't he have been upon a throne with the power, the authority of God? I hear that quite often. And actually, you know, Baha'u'llah addressed that very question. And he said, the ancient beauty hath consented to be bound with chains, that mankind may be released from its bondage, and hath accepted to be made a prisoner within this vast, mighty stronghold, that the whole world may attain unto true liberty. He hath drained to its dregs the cup of sorrow, that all the peoples of the earth may attain unto abiding joy and be filled with gladness. In other words, I love you this much. Can't you see who is the true friend? And all I ask is that you investigate the cause of God. The love of the manifestation. A greater love the world will never know. A different kind of love. In a community not far from where I declared in the South, there was a Baha'i young man who was hyperactive. I mean, really hyperactive. He was a teenager. He had bright red hair. And he was always moving. Just here, there, scat, scat, scat. He was a constant talker. And he was a constant toucher. As he talked, he would touch you. You know, then he'd move across the room and he'd talk and he'd touch you. And he'd move. This is really interesting. And he would talk and touch through the prayers at feast. And he would talk and touch through consultation. And just touch and talk and talk and touch all the time. When you walk into the room, he was the first thing you noticed. He was like that. And it drove the Baha'is nuts. Really, you can't imagine. And you know, they did the best that they could, but it was very difficult. Well, in this community there was a seeker, a woman, who had been investigating the faith for quite some time, a number of years. You know, she was the type who knew everything. She was more than capable of giving the fireside, answering the questions, telling you your mistakes. You know the type I'm talking about, right? But she wouldn't declare. And that drove the Baha'is nuts too, because they couldn't figure her out. Well, one evening, I think it was a holy day, this woman declared. And the Baha'is darn near swooned away. I mean, they were shocked because they were sure this woman would never declare. And you know, they knew her pretty well after all this time. And they said to her, what on earth made you declare after all this time? And you know what she said? She said, the way you treat that hyperactive boy. She said, he is a handful. But you people are so patient and so loving and so kind. I don't know how you do it. She said, because I would have killed him a long time ago. But she said, you didn't. And any community that can show this much love in a situation like this, I believe. There's one more kind of love that I want to talk about. And that is the great love and respect that existed between Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha. You know, I think that this is one of the most beautiful, the most touching, and yet one of the most heart-rending stories in the history of our faith. You know, of course, that Abdu'l-Baha, that was not his name. His name was Abbas, right? And he took on the name of Abdu'l-Baha, or servant, after the ascension of Baha'u'llah. But during his lifetime, Baha'u'llah gave Abdu'l-Baha a number of very unique and wonderful titles. For example, he called him the Master. Imagine that. The manifestation of God calling someone else the Master. Huh? He called him Sirullah, or the mystery of God. And he referred to him as the most great branch, or the greatest branch. And of course, no one was really surprised when Abdu'l-Baha was appointed the successor. Everyone acknowledged Abdu'l-Baha's capacities and his many attributes, And they knew how much Baha'u'llah had relied so heavily upon him in his absence, to meet with the visitors and to transcribe tablets and so forth. But there was also another very special relationship between Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha that everyone could see. You know, Abdu'l-Baha truly recognized the station of Baha'u'llah in a way that no one ever could. He truly understood the station of the manifestation. And he never let that relationship of father and son interfere with that. He truly considered himself as absolutely nothing in relation to his father. As an example of this, you know, when Abdu'l-Baha convinced Baha'u'llah to move to Baji in the last few years of his life, Abdu'l-Baha actually stayed in Akka. And on the occasions when Abdu'l-Baha would come to visit Baha'u'llah, he often rode a donkey. And it seems that as soon as the mansion of Baji was in sight, Abdu'l-Baha would climb down from the donkey and walk the rest of the way out of respect for Baha'u'llah. Now, in turn, it's very interesting. You know, whenever Baha'u'llah heard that Abdu'l-Baha was coming, he would have the entire mansion cleaned. Yeah, get it all cleaned up. And then he would sit at the window and wait for Abdu'l-Baha to appear. And when he saw him coming, he would send out a welcoming party. And he would sit at the window so excited, so eager to see Abdu'l-Baha, the master. Unfortunately, the jealousy of some of the other family members was very great. And because of this jealousy, Abdu'l-Baha's heart would ache. And the situation made Baha'u'llah very, very sad. So even though they longed to be together, even though Abdu'l-Baha and Baha'u'llah longed to be in one another's presence, because of this bickering and this jealousy in the other members of their family and the pain it caused Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha would rarely visit Baji. He would simply stay away. So instead, Abdu'l-Baha and Baha'u'llah would exchange letters between Baji and Akka. Back and forth the letters would go. And it's so touching. Because, you know, Baha'u'llah knew that if he asked Abdu'l-Baha to come, Abdu'l-Baha would feel obliged to come. So he'd find a way to ask him indirectly. You know, if you go to the archives in Haifa, there are a couple of tablets written in the hand of Baha'u'llah addressed to the master. And in one of these tablets, Baha'u'llah says, an occasion has been planned by so-and-so. And it is his greatest desire, it is his greatest desire that you be there. Or he would say, if you cannot come for lunch, won't you come for tea? It is so sad. It is so heartbreaking, this love that existed between them. What is love? I looked it up in the dictionary. It said, a strong liking or enthusiasm for something. Enamored. Knowing what I know about this cause, that sounded too simplistic. You know what Abdu'l-Baha said about love? He said, love is the light that guideth in darkness. Love is the most great law that ruleth this mighty and heavenly cycle, the unique power that bindeth together diverse elements of this material world, the supreme magnetic force that directeth the movement of the spheres in the celestial realms. Love revealeth with unfailing and limitless power the mysteries latent in the universe. Love. Faith. What about faith? You know, faith is a very difficult thing. Theologian Paul Tillich once wrote, without doubt, there can be no faith. Well, we certainly are surrounded by enough doubt, aren't we? There is no faith in this world. How do we know? We know because suicide has increased 300% in this country in the last 25 years. The greatest increase among teens. At least 30,000 Americans will take their own lives this year. And that's a low statistic. Because, you know, families don't normally admit when someone commits suicide. They call it something else. But they know that at least 30,000 Americans will take their own lives. Does this sound like people who have faith? No. You know, 80% of all high school kids say they've used illegal drugs at least once. 80%. 25% say they are regular users. And this is just youth. The statistics for adults are far worse. People are trying to escape. What kind of faith does that sound like to you? You know, it's very sad. But what do we expect? We live in a country where people buy beer sold by a dog. What's that dog's name? Stud or Spud or... The dog says buy it. They buy it. You don't see that anywhere else in the world. True religion is dying out in every land. We know that. We know that. I think America's motto has changed from "In God we trust" to "In God we strongly suspect." You know, I look at the history of our faith, and I am filled with awe when I study the lives of the early believers. When I read of the hatred and the vile acts committed against them, and the torture. You know, Mirza Haydar Ali, the man who penned what we know as The Delight of Hearts, he wrote that his first encounter with the faith was when he witnessed several Babis, several of them who were mullahs and the most learned in the city. He saw them being assailed by a crowd, and they refused to recant. So the crowd took them and nailed them to a post by their ears, and then proceeded to beat them. And at that moment, he said, what kind of faith do these people have? They didn't complain. You know what they did? They stood there reciting verses from the Quran, proving the validity of the Bab's message. What kind of faith? Jump to the 1980s. What manner of faith do Baha'is of today possess? You know, we have something that the early believers didn't have. The benefit of hindsight. You know, when Abdu'l-Baha said that tobacco was injurious to the health by degrees, the believers then, they didn't have the evidence linking smoking to cancer and lung disease and so on. They didn't have that. They accepted his words on faith. You know, over 100 years ago, when Baha'u'llah wrote that alcohol destroys the brain and other vital organs, no one knew what scientists know today. They accepted on faith. They believed on faith. They stopped using it on faith. When Baha'u'llah said, mankind is one, and that this cause will unite all humanity, the early believers didn't have the biological evidence of the oneness of mankind that we have today. The early believers did not have in their community 2,112 different races, tribes, and ethnic groups like we have today. They accepted on faith. They accepted on faith. They believed when Baha'u'llah said that this is the lodestone of the hearts of men. We see, we know, but they didn't have that. The thing that they did have, the element that we share with them, was a self-validating experience. An experience that no one can take away with them through argument, through torture. You can't take it away. You've proven it to yourself from the inside out. And that experience is the experience of being transformed by the creative Word of God. That experience was the foundation of their faith, even as it is the foundation of the faith of many of us. Today, that experience is reflected in many different ways. A friend of mine, he was a new Baha'i in the early 1980s. He was from France. He was a French chef by profession, and he wanted to pioneer. So he consulted with the International Goals Office of this country, and they helped him choose the goal of French Guiana, and that's where he went to pioneer. I'll call him John. Well, John starts to apply for work as a French chef. And of course, everybody wants him to cook with alcohol. If you know anything about French cooking, there's a lot of alcohol. Well, John is a Baha'i now. He refuses to cook with alcohol. So interview after job interview, they're turning him away. No alcohol, no work. They say no, he says no. Well, after several weeks of this, his money is low, he's very frustrated. So one night, he says he went out walking on the beach in utter desperation. And he began to pray. And he said, with tears in my eyes, I said, God, I don't know what to do. I can't stay at my post without a job. But I don't have any other skills. And he begged, God, give me a sign. Just tell me what to do. And he said, no answer came. And he stayed out on that beach all night, walking and praying and crying. Well, he says he went back to the little room he was renting. And then next morning he got a phone call from the owner of a French restaurant. And the man said, I saw your resume. It's kind of scattered all over. And he said, tell me about your credentials. And my friend John told him. And he said, well, about your experience here. And he talked a little bit. And he said, well, what's your specialty? And he told him. And he says, well, John, you seem perfect, but there is one condition that you may not like. And John goes, oh, here it comes. And the man said, you must never cook with alcohol. It seems that this was a French restaurant that was experimenting with food without alcohol. And that's how John stayed at his post. He believed. He believed. Pilgrimage. Now there's a lesson in faith. A friend of mine says that your pilgrimage starts when you begin looking for the money. It's one of the 7 valleys, the valley of poverty. I had an interesting pilgrimage. And that's a code word for Baha'is, right? Interesting. Baha'is don't like to be negative, and they don't like to backbite. So whenever things are kind of screwy, they say, well, how was feast? Oh, it was interesting. I say, who was elected to the assembly? Oh, it was interesting. So I had an interesting pilgrimage. The Universal House of Justice asked our National Assembly to pick up a very special prepaid package for them and have a quote-unquote responsible pilgrim bring it over. And they couldn't find one, so they asked me to bring it. And the instructions that they got were from a gentleman named John Conting. By the way, John is alive, but he's innocent in this case, so I'll use his name. John was a purchasing agent and also he happened to be a friend of mine. Well, the special package happened to be a 10-pound box of gold leaf. Now, what's gold leaf? Gold leaf is more or less gold that has been ground into very fine dust. And it's used to embellish the shrines. And they use it on the gates at Baji and so forth. And it's very valuable stuff. According to the invoice, there were 12 boxes in the package, each one valued at $250 for a total of about $3,000. And it was all packaged in this very awkward-sized box. Now, that's all I knew. $3,000 and a box is hard to carry. Okay. The NSA Secretariat gave me a sealed envelope. The envelope that comes from the World Center. And in the envelope, the letter said that when you get to customs, tell them this. If they respond this way, tell them that. And if they ask thus, show them the invoice. And if they object with this way, show them this note. I mean, it went on and on. It was really strange. This is from Haifa, mind you. Now, airlines being the way they are, I decided not to pack it. Can you imagine losing your luggage with $3,000 of gold that belongs to God? I am not going to pack this. So I held the box in my lap the whole time or either under my feet. I was traveling by coincidence with a friend from the same area. We landed in Paris for a very brief refueling or something. I don't want to get off the plane. But she's got to go to the bathroom. And she doesn't want to go alone. So she literally pleads with me, come on, go with me. Okay, I go. I take the box and we start. I'm looking around. I don't see any officials. I don't see any policemen. But what I do see is a very long and winding conveyor ramp. You ever been to Paris? They got this long thing. So we get on this ramp. And by the time we get to the end and go around that last bend, I see enough customs officials and police officers to host a Michael Jackson concert. I mean, they were everywhere. I wanted to turn back, but the only way to turn back was to jump over the rail, and they would have seen me. So we said, okay, we got to go. So we went. The lady went to the bathroom. She comes back. We say, okay, we're going to be real casual, real nonchalant. We go by, we're whistling, everything's okay. And I hear someone say, Monsieur. Now, friends, anytime a custom official in France says to you just that one word, Monsieur, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. And we come over and he says, Qu'est-ce que c'est? Pointing to the box, what is it? And I say, gold leaf. And he says, gold leaf? Gold leaf? Qu'est-ce que c'est gold leaf? Yeah. These guys did not speak any English. Not a word. Now, you are looking at 6 years of high school French. But all I could think of was, oh mon Dieu. That's all I had in my vocabulary on that day. Now, my friend is very high-strung, and right now she's feeling very guilty and very scared. So I show this guy the invoice, and I show him the letter. They don't care. They don't read English. Doesn't mean anything to them. Doesn't mean diddly. Well, at this point, there is this German shepherd who is salivating on my box. Now, friends, wait. This is the box that I am taking to the house of the Lord, and this dog is salivating on it. Okay, so I'm starting to feel something, right? Finally, one of the policemen pulls out a large knife. I am not making this up. He pulls out a large knife, and he raises it above the seam of the box. Now, I don't have any idea what this gold leaf looks like. But all I can imagine is this knife coming down and gold going everywhere. Friends, I did something stupid. And I don't know why I did it. To this day, I cannot explain it. But as that man started down with that knife, I reached out and I grabbed his wrist. My friend screamed. The man was shocked. I was too. And the funny thing is that he gave me a look that I did not need French to understand. It was like, you do that again and they'll be tracing you in chalk. They opened the box. And you know what it looked like? It looked like little pads of paper. They were like gold sheets of dust separated by different sheets of tissue paper. And the guy starts flipping through it like a comic book. And he takes his finger and just goes down in it, and he comes up with a fingertip full of gold. And I am thinking, how much money is on his finger? They motioned to some other officials, and friends, they took us behind a screen and strip searched us. Now, friends, I have never been strip searched. I'm not from that kind of neighborhood. I wasn't used to that. When we came out, the box had been taped up, and someone said in English, "You can go." And my friend and I looked at each other, and we were thinking the same thing. How do we know what they put in that box? We don't know if they put it back. We had no idea. Well, eventually I arrived at the Pilgrim House in Haifa. And I told them I had a package expressly for John Conkling, the purchasing agent. And the receptionist says, "Oh, that's okay, I'll take it." Well, heck, I'm tired of this box. I said, take it. I don't care. Later that day, I saw John Conkling. And like I said, he's an old friend. And we chatted for a while. And then John very offhandedly said, "By the way, did you get the gold leaf?" And I look at him and I say, "By the way?" By the way? He says, "You didn't have a problem, did you?" I said, "Oh, no." And he smiled and he says, "We knew you'd make it. We had faith." And you know, it's always the little things that shake your faith. You ever notice that? It's never anything important, little something small. For instance, potlucks. Potlucks. Now, is potlucks in the Agdas? No, wait. I want to know, has anybody seen potlucks in the Agdas? Because the Baha'is believe in potlucks. A friend of mine said that potlucks were prophesied in the Bible. I'm serious. And he'll quote you. He says, "There will be in the last day food and the rumors of food. And there will come a gnashing of teeth." Something like that. You know, this is the season too, isn't it? This is the season. You've got the birth of the Bab, you've got the birth of Baha'u'llah, you've got the ascension of Abdu'l-Baha, you've got Thanksgiving, you've got Christmas. You know, this time of year, I'm always afraid I'm going to eat myself into the next world. But you know what? I found a holiday prayer for dieters. I'm not kidding. This is a great... No, it wasn't revealed by Abdu'l-Baha. But it's perfect for the holidays. And I wasn't going to read this, but what the heck. Listen to this. "Lord, grant me the strength that I may not fall into the clutches of cholesterol. At polyunsaturates, I'll never mutter, for the road to hell is paved with butter. And cake is cursed, and cream is awful, and Satan is hiding in every waffle. Beelzebub is a chocolate drop, and Lucifer is a lollipop. Teach me the evils of hollandaise, of pasta and gobs of mayonnaise, and crisp fried chicken from the South. Lord, if you love me, shut my mouth. I'm here to tell you, it takes a lot of faith to believe potlucks are good for you. A whole lot of faith. Faith. Martha Root. Faith. Marian Jack. Jamal Effendi, the first Baha'i to ever go to India. What kind of faith did these people have? I recently learned that there's a tree called a Chinese bamboo tree. And it seems that you plant this tree in the first year, and you water it, and you fertilize the soil, and absolutely nothing happens. The second year, you fertilize the soil, you water it, again nothing. The third year, nothing. The fourth year, you plant, you fertilize, absolutely nothing. For 4 long years, confident of the eventual growth, this is the essence of faith. And what of miracles? I don't mean physical miracles, as in controlling or manipulating the environment. Of course, there were many episodes of this recorded in our faith. Lots of episodes about miracles. But I mean rather miracles of circumstance. Miracles of souls being awakened. And miracles where God, in no uncertain term, asserted His authority. When you speak of miracles in this faith, first and foremost is the miracle of the manifestation himself, Baha'u'llah. You know, the life of Baha'u'llah is filled with so many miracles, so many miraculous episodes, many of which are of a significance that you really can't understand unless you wait a long time and study very hard. For example, you know, it was during Baha'u'llah's exile in Baghdad that his fame and his influence grew so great that the mullahs and the clergy decided that they had to find a way to discredit him and silence him. So they issued a challenge. You remember this story? They issued a challenge, and they demanded that Baha'u'llah meet with them, and in front of the whole population, perform a miracle of their choosing. Now stop and think about this. They knew Baha'u'llah would never accept such a challenge. They knew that. And what they would do is they would spread all over that this man had refused to meet them, and he would run off and hide, and he would be discredited in the face of all of his believers. This was their plan. In response to that challenge, Baha'u'llah wrote them a tablet. And in that tablet, he chastised them, saying they had no right to demand a miracle as a sign from God. And then, he did something no one expected. He said yes. He said yes. He said, I will meet you. I accept the challenge on 2 conditions. One, he said, the group of clergy must agree on the miracle to be performed. And secondly, he said, once performed, the clergy must publicly acknowledge his authority and cease persecution of his followers. The clergy fled in absolute horror. No way were they going to meet this man. Never in the history of religion has such a thing happened. This day is so great that the manifestation of God leaves no room for vacillation. He leaves no excuse for ignorance. He leaves no challenge unanswered. It's amazing. You know, from his prison cell, Baha'u'llah wrote to the kings and the rulers and the clergy of the 19th century, announcing his manifestation and summoning them to champion the cause of God and establish the most great peace. Do you remember the story of Napoleon III? It's a wonderful story. That was the French emperor, of course, one of the most powerful leaders the world had seen at that time. And of course it was to Napoleon that Baha'u'llah issued a summons pointing out many of the things Napoleon had done that weren't too good. And really begging him, for the sake of the cause of God, to assist the people and to help them and to be just and beneficent and so forth. It was that tablet that Napoleon greeted with such disdain. In fact, Napoleon III was quoted as saying, "If this man is God, I am two gods." Baha'u'llah wrote him a second tablet. And in that tablet he wrote, "For what thou hast done, thy kingdom shall be thrown into confusion, and thine empire shall pass from thine hands as a punishment for that which thou hast wrought." This tablet was sent in 1869. And history shows that barely a year later, Napoleon III, whose power and influence had staggered the world, Napoleon III was defeated. Amazing. What you may not know is that the French agent in Acre, who translated the tablet of Baha'u'llah that was sent to Napoleon, was so thunderstruck by the swift fulfillment of Napoleon's downfall that he accepted the faith of Baha'u'llah. Nothing short of a miracle. And this is only one episode. Virtually all of the kings and rulers that Baha'u'llah wrote to ignored the summons, and every one of their kingdoms crumbled. Everyone. Never in history have we seen this. A prisoner toppling the kingdoms of the very rulers who exiled him. Never in history. You know, like that French agent in Acre, the way people are led to this faith is amazing to me. A woman, I met her very recently. She's from India. Several years ago, she befriended a Baha'i. And the Baha'i gave her a book. Well, we're known for doing that. We'll give you a book like that. And she suggested that this book held the answer to all of her questions about life and purpose and God and so on. Well, the woman gave her this book in December. And the woman put the book in her purse and promptly proceeded to ignore it. She refused to open it. For 3 months it just sat there. Well, it seems that the woman worked on the 8th floor of a high-rise apartment building. And in March of the following year, 3 months after she got the book, while riding the elevator got stuck. And she was alone, all by herself in this tiny little cube. She had no way to communicate. She had no way to escape. So after several anxious moments, she realized, I'm not going to get out of here anytime soon. So she began scrambling through her purse for something to read. She found 2 things. One was a report that she herself had written, and she had no desire to read it. The second was this Baha'i book. The woman was trapped in that elevator with this Baha'i book for over 2 hours. By the time they got that elevator moving, she had almost finished the book. And shortly thereafter, she enrolled as a Baha'i. It's amazing. It is amazing. Would someone remind me of the time very quickly? 5 minutes? 7 minutes. I'm going to stretch it, folks. You ready? Miracles. Friends, to me, Abdu'l-Baha's journey to the West is one of the greatest miracles of this dispensation. I think about that and I am always stunned. At the age of 66, he left the Holy Land and began to travel in Canada, in Europe, in Egypt. By the time he reached this country, he was 68 years old. 68 years old. Now, friends, I love him. I love Abdu'l-Baha. He was the master. He was the mystery of God. But, friends, let's face it, the man was old. And yet, with superhuman strength, he arose and with eloquence, with wisdom, with something that could not be described as anything but brilliant. He met with professors, with scientists, with politicians, with the clergy, with youth, with women's groups, with people from every class of society, in large lecture halls and small living rooms. And he spoke with an authority and a profound understanding of every subject imaginable. And he won the love and the respect and the deepest reverence from people everywhere he went. Now, friends, think about this. He is totally unfamiliar with Western society. He's been in prison and exile since the age of 8. He spent years in chains, no formal education. How did he do that? How did he do it? It's a miracle. The covenant. The covenant. The covenant, by definition, is a miracle. Friends, look around you. I know it's dark, but just look to the left and look to the right. Look at the people you're sitting next to. Look at the diversity. the amazing diversity in this faith. Think about the communities around the world. How did God bring these people together? How did He do it? What power, what catalyst exists in this cause to bring about such a union? In the recorded history of this planet, there has never been a power that could bring this many races, this many cultures, this many nations together. It's never existed before. Never. Together for a common cause. It's never been done. Now, can you imagine what this faith would be like if we did not have the covenant? Look around again. I'll wait. Friends, I think about that sometimes. And I look at the friends and I go, wow. Wow. We'd really have a mess. What power is this that the world has never seen? Friends, the covenant is a miracle. Perhaps the greatest miracle of all. It's time to end. I saw parts of the recent political conventions on television several weeks ago. And Baha'is, of course, don't get involved in partisan politics. We know that. But there were some interesting things, there's that word again, being said on both sides. How many of you heard Jesse Jackson at the Democratic Convention? Okay. He had the crowd on their feet. You know why? Because he was talking about a revolution. A revolution in the way we do business in this country and in this world. A revolution that's long overdue. Friends, the people want change. They are ready. They are ready for a revolution. They are ready to change this planet. But the irony is that they don't understand. They are talking about a material revolution. A material revolution. They don't understand that the working of the material world is a reflection of spiritual conditions. And that until the spiritual conditions are changed, there can be no lasting change in the material world. They don't understand that. That's all they understand, just material. There is a revolution going on, but they don't know what it's about. Who knows? We know. We as Baha'is know what the revolution is about. But friends, let's be honest. And this is the last thing I want to share with you. Our numbers are few. Our financial resources are very weak. For an organization our size, our finances are almost non-existent. It's not funny. And our material resources of every kind are rapidly dwindling. Who are these ragged soldiers, these disheveled architects who dream of rebuilding the world? I'll tell you who you are. Baha'u'llah says you are the solace of the eye of creation. You are the breezes of spring that must refresh humanity. You are the leaven that must leaveneth the world. In this dark and discouraging world, filled with such pain and despair, they say, we don't believe in love. And who can blame them? They say the world has lost their faith. They say miracles don't happen anymore. But if you are a Baha'i, a true Baha'i, you are the evidence of God's love. You are the embodiment of unwavering faith. You are the proof of God's miracles. We don't have to look to the past for these things. They are in this room right now. O people of Baha, you who are the evidence, you who are the embodiment, you who are the proof, may God bless you in your efforts to carry forward this sacred cause. Allahu Akbar.